auto engine. Let's see what's inside, shall we? You see, there are 4 tubes called cylinders, and inside each cylinder is a kind of plunger called a piston. You see?
Have you got that, Chumley? The engine has 4 cylinders, and inside each cylinder is a plunger called a piston. Okay, Mr. Whoopi, go ahead.
Oh, well, a little gas and air come into the cylinder. Now, gas is very, very explosive. So when a spark plug at the top of the cylinder makes a spark, there is an explosion which pushes the piston down.
Okay. Gas comes into the cylinder, a spark plug makes a spark, and the explosion makes the piston go down.
Perfect, my boy. And then, of course, the piston comes back up and pushes out the burned-up gas. Then back down, pulling in more gas and air. Then back up for another spark. And whoopee! Our motor is running as the cycle is repeated over and over. And naturally, the same business takes place in all the other cylinders, too.
Okay, Mr. Whoopi, thanks. We've got it now.
Fabulous, fantastic, flashy, flexible, and infallible 3D BB. There, now, what was it you,
Rain.
Oh, yes, indeed. Rain. Well, rain comes from the clouds. Every cloud is made of millions and millions of tiny droplets of water. Like this. So light, they stay up in the sky and float around in the form of clouds. You see?
Yes, of course, only how do they get down?
Yes. Well, yeah, get down. Well, as the cloud floats around, the droplets bump into each other and join together until pretty soon they're too big and heavy to stay up in the sky. And then, whoopee! It rains.
Fine. Great. Terrific. But how can we make it rain?
Well, yes. Well, one way is to fly over a cloud and sprinkle thousands of little tiny pieces of dry ice on it.
Dry ice? Hey, Tennessee.
Chumley wants to know how to dry ice.
Dry ice? Oh, no. That's just a special kind of ice, like ice cream men use to keep their ice cream cold in their trucks. When you sprinkle it on the clouds, it's called seeding, because each little seed of ice helps make the droplets grow bigger. Of course, it doesn't work every time, but
that's good enough. Let's go. Stop. Take. Wow.
Whoa. You know, my boy, you were trying to do in 5 minutes what mankind has taken thousands of years to develop. The first light was probably a torch, plucked out of the fire by a caveman and used to scare off his enemies. But then, of course, you know all about torches, don't you? Oh, yes. Later, somebody discovered that oil would travel up a wick and would burn thus. And after that came candles, then kerosene lamps, then gas lamps.
That's fine, Mr. Whoopi, but what about electric lights?
Yes, electric lights, yes, of course. Well, you'll note that in these other forms of light, something burned, right?
Yes, we know about burning.
Well, for years, men tried to make a light that would not use a flame. And in 1879, Thomas Edison, the world's greatest inventor, did it. He knew that when electricity is passed through a fine thread, the thread will get white hot and give off light. Trouble was that the thread, which is called a filament, soon burned up. Edison knew that things can't burn if there is no air. So he put the filament in a glass bulb and pumped out all of the air. Now the filament lasted a little longer, but still not long enough to be practical. He searched all over the world for a filament that would last. He made test after test. Finally, he tested a filament made of bamboo fiber. It burned a long time. The electric light was a success. Today, of course, the filaments are made of a metal called tungsten and last a very long time.
Did you get that, Chumley? First, we need a thread for a filament. Then we pump the air from the milk bottle, and then we'll have ourselves a real light.
Not so fast, not so fast, my boy. You know what happened the last time you tried to make a light. You both might have been killed. Electricity is a very dangerous thing and should be handled only by trained, experienced men. I want you to promise me you'll never again fool around with electricity. Promise?
All right, we promise. But what are we going to do for a light?
Oh, you'll think of something. Ah, here it is. Now, let's see. Oh, yes, the telephone. Every phone has two parts. The speaking part, called the transmitter, and the listening part, called the receiver. These are connected by wires to another phone, and an electrical current from a battery runs through them. Now, let's take a closer look at the speaking part. Right here is a thin piece of metal called a diaphragm, and behind this diaphragm is a little box containing tiny grains of carbon. The electricity goes through the carbon. Now, when you speak, your voice makes the diaphragm vibrate. When that happens, it presses the carbon particles closer together and regulates the flow of electricity. You see? Oh, yes. Well, over at the receiver, there's a little magnet and another diaphragm. As the current goes through the magnet, it makes this diaphragm vibrate in the same way, so that the same sound comes out of the receiver as went into the transmitter. Try it, Chumley.
That's fine, Mr. Whoopi. But Chumley and I could never build electromagnets and carbon particles. Isn't there a simple way?
Well, yes, my boy, there is. I can show you how to make a phone out of 2 tin cans and some wire. Stretch the wire between them tightly. Now, when you talk into one can, it makes it vibrate, which makes the wire vibrate, which makes the other can vibrate, just like the telephone.
Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the...
B. We'll just open it up and have a look. If you fill the kitchen sink full of water and turn an ordinary drinking glass upside down in it, you'll notice that the water does not come up into the glass, right?
Right.
The earliest diving apparatus worked just this way. They were helmets made of leather, but they didn't hold enough air to let a man stay under very long. So a hose was attached to it and air was pumped down. It went into the helmet and bubbled out the bottom. Trouble was, if the diver leaned over, the air escaped and water filled the helmet. Very bad. Then an Englishman solved the problem by making a whole suit out of leather and fastening it to the helmet. Now the water couldn't get in, and he put a valve on the helmet to let the air get out. It worked fine, just fine. And that was the beginning of our modern diving suit.
But, Mr. Whoopi, that doesn't look anything like the suit we've got on.
Of course not, my boy, of course not. Chumley's suit is quite different, although the principle is the same. In the first place, the helmet is round and it's made of copper, and has glass portholes to see through, and even a telephone so the diver can talk to the boat on the surface. The helmet is screwed onto a breastplate, which is fastened onto the suit. The suit is made of rubber and canvas. Then, of course, there is the air hose and the compressor to pump the air down. The diver can control the flow of air with a valve on the helmet. And now he's ready to go to the bottom.
But, Mr. Whoopi, he's going up.
Why, so he has. I forgot his lead shoes. With all that air in the suit, he'll float unless he has heavy lead shoes, weighing 20 pounds apiece. There we are. Now he can go down several hundred feet and work for a long time finding treasure or giant clams. Yes.
Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the great.
Here it is. The fantastic, fabulous, fancily flamboyant 3D BB. Now, a clock is a device for telling time. The first device for telling time was the sundial. A shadow pointed to the hour. But, of course, the sundial was absolutely useless on a cloudy day. Another early timepiece was the water clock. Water dripped from one container to another, And as the water level rose, a floating stick told how many hours had passed.
That's pretty interesting, Mr. Whoopi, but I don't think Stanley Livingston would go for a water clock. We'd better start learning how to fix the big clock.
Yes, well, yes. The kind of clock you're talking about was invented about 1,000 years ago. And the basic principle is the same today as it was then. Power to run the clock comes from a falling weight. The weight is attached to a cord which is wrapped around a drum. The drum was attached by a system of gears to the hands of the clock. Now, as the weight fell, it pulled the cord, which turned the drum, which turned the gears, which moved the hand, which told the time. However, in the early days of clocks, the weight would fall too fast, and the clocks didn't keep very good time. Then someone got the idea of fastening a pendulum to the clock. As the pendulum swings back and forth, it moves an arm which is connected to the teeth of the gears and alternately starts them and stops them so that the weight falls at just the right speed and the clock keeps good time.
Does my watch have weights and a pendulum, too?
Oh, no, my boy. Your watch uses a spring instead of weights and a flywheel instead of a pendulum. Other clocks use electricity and even atomic power. But the clock in the zoo uses weights and a pendulum like this.
Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the man of the hour.
Here we are, the 3DBB. Now, as you both probably know, the art of making statues is called sculpture. It's a very old art. Thousands of years ago, the Egyptians made huge statues, like the Sphinx. It has the body of a lion to stand for strength and the head of a man to stand for intelligence. After the Egyptians, there were the famous Greek statues and Roman statues. And in the 15th century, Italy had some of the greatest sculptors the world has ever known.
Very interesting, Mr. Whoopi, but how did they make their statues?
How did it? Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, indeed. Well, planning the statue is the first step. The sculptor must draw a sketch of what he wants his statue to look like.
All right, get that down, Chumley. First, we draw a picture of Stanley Livingston.
Next, the sculptor must make a small model out of clay to look like his sketch.
Check. Now, next, we make a small model out of clay. Then what?
Well, Tennessee, the third step is usually to make a full-size clay model. And this is very intricate work. For this, the sculptor must make a strong framework of wood and lead pipe. Then onto this, he puts his clay, working slowly and finally molding this into his finished full-size model. Then he's ready to begin his statue.
Zowie. All that just to start? But we've got to do it. What next, Mr. Whoopi?
Then the sculptor begins carving in whatever material he chooses. Wood, or stone, or marble. There are bronze statues, too, but you wouldn't be able to do that. You see, to make a statue of bronze, you must first make a mold from your clay model. Then molten bronze is poured into the mold.
The statue we broke was stone, Mr. Whoopi, so that's what we'll have to use. Thanks a million for teaching us how. You're
Fabulous, fantastic 3DBB. The first thing you've got to know is that a camera is simply a box that is completely light-proof. No light can get in except through the lens in the front of the box.
Lens? What's the lens for?
The lens, my boy, is a piece of glass which squeezes the light so that the image of what you are photographing can fit in the camera. After all, you couldn't very well put a 6-foot walrus into a 6-inch camera, now could you? The lens does it for you. Now, right here in back of the lens is the shutter. It opens and closes very quickly when you push the button on the side of the camera. When the shutter opens, it lets the picture through to the film.
Film? I knew there was something missing. There was no film in the camera.
Of course not, my boy. You have to put the film in yourself. It goes back here. It's on a roll. Every time you take a picture, you turn a little crank on the outside of the camera. That rolls the film so that you're ready to take the next picture.
Have you got that, Chumley? It's not just point it and push it. It's point it and push it and crank it. Chumley, we've got it. Let's go. Thanks, Mr. Whoopi.
Thanks? Wait! Newspapers. Well, the business of spreading news is certainly different from what it was in ancient times. Then, news was spread from place to place, mostly by travelers moving from one city to the next. Of course, if news was very important, special messengers might be sent with it.
Make way for the messenger of the king! Those guys were really in a hurry.
Oh, yes, indeed. Well, early newspapers were published by a printer as a part of his regular business. Each printer edited his own paper, deciding what news he should print and how it should be told.
But it's not like that today, eh, Mr. Whoopi?
Oh, no. Let's just consider how a newspaper gets a story today.
This is it, Chumley. Don't miss a word.
Well, just suppose there's a big fire somewhere in the city. The newspaper sends a reporter to the fire right away to get the story on the spot. Now, often, this reporter doesn't even take time to go back to his office. To get the news in as fast as possible, he telephones his story into what they call a rewrite man. The man who takes down the reporter's facts and writes the story the way you read it.
Zowie. Then what?
Well, next, the story is given to a linotype operator. He's the fellow who sets the story in type so that thousands of copies of it can be made.
Okay, it's set in type. What now?
Then come the big presses. This story of the fire, along with many, many other stories, is put on the giant presses, and they start to roll. They not only print the hundreds or thousands or even millions of copies needed, but many of them cut and fold the newspapers as well. Finally, a conveyor belt takes the papers down to the delivery room where trucks pick them up and deliver them to all parts of the city so that you can buy them at a stand or have them delivered by a newsboy.
Big, Mr. Whoopi. Huge, exciting, terrific.
Oh, yes, indeed.
But no good for us.
No? But why, my boy?
Money, Mr. Whoopi. Think what it would cost us to pay for the printing presses.
Oh, but for the zoo, you only need a small newspaper and not many copies, so you can use a small printing set. And I just happen to have one here. Now all you need is These 3D books really give you the feel of history. Well, now, it was about the year 1200 that the Aztec Indians moved down from North America into what is now Mexico. The Aztec Indians had bows and arrows, while the other Indians had only clubs. So the Aztecs always won the battle.
All right, wise guys. Let's don't make this a sore subject. Go ahead, Mr. Whoopi.
Oh, yes. Well, by the year 1400 or so, the Aztecs and their better weapons had conquered almost all of Mexico. They called their capital city Tenochtitlan. Tenochtitlan was a very lovely city. Many of the buildings were made of light-colored stone, which shone in the sunlight. There were lovely homes and beautiful temples.
Gee, Mr. Whoopi, they must have had a lot of rain. The streets were all flooded.
Oh, no, Chumley. These are canals. The Aztecs used canals instead of streets. I wonder if their throughways were slippery when dry. Oh, yeah.
Say, Mr. Whoopi, look at that archway over there where those two fellows are standing. What do those pictures on the archway mean?
Well, you see, the Aztecs didn't have any alphabet like we do. They wrote with pictures. That's the Aztec Zoo.
The zoo? Remember that, Chumley. Remember how it looks. Now, one last thing, Mr. Whoopi. You don't hear about the Aztecs today. What happened to them?
Well, in the year 1518, a Spaniard named Hernando Cortez sailed with a large army to fight and conquer the Aztecs. There was a fierce battle, and the Aztecs lost. Today, Mexico City is where Tenochtitlan was.
Well, if the evidence of an Aztec zoo is in Mexico, we know enough to find it. And I'll be a public hero.
This fantastic, phenomenal 3D BB. Now, even though coal looks like black rocks, it is made from plants. It was formed during the Coal Age about 200 million years ago. There were great swamp forests in those days. When the big trees and firs in the swamp died, they fell into the water. These dead plants made a layer on the bottom, and this layer became covered with mud. New trees grew and the whole cycle was repeated. As the layers built up over millions of years, the weight squeezed the dead trees into what we call coal.
Very good, Mr. Whoopi, but how do we get coal out of the ground now?
Yes, well, when man discovered coal would burn, he started to mine it. He dug deep shafts into the earth, and then he dug tunnels out into the layers of coal. They have railroad tracks in them so that the coal can be hauled out in little cars. When the miners arrive for work, they put on their safety helmets with lights on the front.
Remember that, Chumley. Before we start our mine, we have to be lightheaded.
Yes. Then the miners go down the shaft in very fast elevators. They get into the cars and go to the end of the tunnels. Here they crack out the coal, sometimes with a pick and shovel, sometimes with explosives, but most often with big cutting machines. When the cars are full, they are hauled up to the top of a building called a breaker and dumped. In the breaker, it is broken into different sizes and sent down chutes into waiting coal cars, which carry it to power plants to produce electricity.
To manufacturing plants.
And to houses for use in stoves.
That's us, Chumley. Coal for stoves. Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the greatest. Come on, Chumley.
But wait! Coal mining is... Now, let me see. Balloons. Well, balloons really got started way back in 1783. Over in France, there were two brothers, Joseph and Stephen Montgolfier.
Who?
Montgolfier. Joseph and Stephen Montgolfier. They were the first ones to really get balloons off the ground. Get it? Well, their first balloon carried some animals.
Aha! Did you get that, Chumley? Animals were the first to go up in a balloon.
Oh, yes. Then later, that same year, a Montgolfier balloon carried a man up.
All right, Mr. Whoopi, but just how did the balloon work? Get this down, Chumley.
All righty, Tennessee.
Well, actually, the Montgolfier brothers made their balloons out of linen, and they filled the balloons with smoke and hot air from a fire.
That's a hot one.
Oh, yes. Well, they had their balloon tied down with ropes. There was a hole in the bottom, and they built a fire underneath so that the balloon could fill up with hot air and smoke. Heated air and smoke are lighter, you see, than the normal air we breathe. This, of course, made the balloon lighter than the air around it. So when they released the ropes, whoopee! The balloon went right up into the air.
Have you got that, Chumley?
Yeah, hot air and smoke from fire is lighter than regular air, so the balloon goes up.
Right. Of course, when the smoke and hot air cooled, the balloon came down. That's why men later used gases like hydrogen or helium inside balloons. These gases are lighter than air even without being heated. Won't you come aboard?
How do you guide this thing?
You can guide it, but you can make it go up or down. To go up, just toss out a bag of this sand.
Ow! How do we get down?
Just let some of the gas out. See?
Well, Phineas J. Whoopi, you have done it again. You're the Whoopi. What now?
Well, rivers can be used for irrigation. That's one reason why huge dams have been built across many rivers, like Hoover Dam in Colorado. These dams trap the river water in reservoirs. Then, as it's needed, it's piped out to dry land, just like your watermelon patch.
Beautiful, Mr. Whoopi. Only, we don't have any river in the Megapolis Zoo.
Then it looks like you'll have to get yourself a well.
Sounds like a deep subject, Mr. Whoopi.
Oh, yeah. Well, in places where water is very deep in the ground, wells are drilled. Piping is used with a large drill on the end, and the machine bores this drill into the ground. until water is reached. Then, motors pump the water up to the top of the ground.
Aha. That's water, all right, Mr. Whoopi. But we haven't got all that equipment.
Well, you could try the older way of digging a well. You just use a shovel. Then, if the water on your land is shallow enough, you just keep digging down until you strike water. You bring the water to the surface with a bucket and a rope.
That's perfect. Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the greatest.
But wait! Water on your land may be down too deep. Fabulous three-dimensional blackboard. This is a television camera. On the front, it has a lens just like a regular camera, but inside, it's very different. Inside, instead of film, there's a long electron tube called an orthicon. The orthicon takes what the lens sees and turns it into electric current, which is called a picture signal. This picture signal is sent over a cable to the transmitter, where it is turned into waves, and whoopee! It's sent over the air to your set.
Could you show us on the real camera, Mr. Whoopi?
But of course, my boy, of course. I'll turn the camera on Chumley, and you turn on the set. Can you see him now?
Perfect. Well, don't just stand there, Chumley. Do something. You're on TV.
I will now perform a military tap.
Great act, Chumley. A smash. But there's still something I don't understand, Mr. Whoopi.
Well, what's that, my boy?
I looked real close, and I didn't see any picture going across the room between the camera and the TV set.
But of course you didn't. There wasn't any picture, just electromagnetic waves which are invisible.
But then how...
How does it get to be a picture again? Well, let's go back to the 3D BB. Inside every TV set, there's a big tube. You call it a picture tube, but the correct name is cathode ray tube. It takes the waves from the transmitter and turns them back into electrons. In the back of this tube, there's an electron gun which shoots the electrons at the front of the tube. The front of the tube is coated with a special chemical which lights up when the electrons hit it. And this is what makes the picture.
I get it. The orthicon tube turns the picture into electrons, and the cathode ray tube turns the electrons back into the picture.
Precisely, my boy.
Then, just how are we going to fix Mr. Malinoff's TV set?
You aren't. I want you to promise me never, never, never monkey around with the back of a TV set. That's a job for experts.
Okay, Mr. Whoopi. First we need to know how far away it is.
Well, the moon is the Earth's nearest neighbor. Only 240,000 miles away.
240,000 miles? That's pretty far. What if we miss it? How big is the moon?
It's much smaller than the Earth, Tennessee. Why, if the Earth were hollow, it would hold about 50 moons.
We're just trying to find one. Well, at least it will be lit up. That should be a big help.
Now, hold on, Tennessee. The moon doesn't really light up. You see, it doesn't give off its own light the way the sun does.
But it always looks bright at night.
No, not always. You see, the moon simply reflects the light that shines on it from the sun. And we, here on Earth, only see the part of the moon that the sun lights up. Once each month, the sun, Earth, and moon are in this position, with the Earth in the middle. Then the sun can shine on all of the side toward the Earth, and we see the moon as a full circle. But 2 weeks later, the sun, Earth, and moon are in this position, with the moon in the middle. Then the side of the moon toward the Earth is not lit up at all, and the moon seems to have disappeared. In between times, as the moon circles around the Earth, we see only a portion of it lit up like this.
But what does the moon really look like, Mr. Whoopi? Is there really a man in it?
No, Chumley. That's just the shadows caused by the mountains and plains on its surface. There are also giant hollows called craters. And I hope you boys took along lots of supplies because, unfortunately, the moon has no water and no air.
Maybe we could still go back.
Sit down, Chumley.
Not only that, but the days there are very hot. The temperature goes up to the boiling point. And at night, the temperature goes down to far, far below freezing.
Zowie. That's awful. But I guess we'll be okay in our spacesuits. They sure are heavy, though.
Well, they'll be much lighter on the moon.
Lighter?
Yes, and you'll be lighter, too. Why, if you weigh 90 pounds on Earth, you'll weigh only 15 pounds on the moon. That's because gravity on the moon is much less than gravity on Earth. On the moon, you'll weigh so little, you'll be able to jump as high as the height of a tall building.
Oh, boy. I'm going to take movies. Jeroboam Jump will turn green with envy.
Hey, look, Kenneth, see out the windshield.
It's the moon. Signing off, Mr. Whoopi. Over and out. We're going in for a landing. Chumley. He means a big crane to lift the building.
Neither one. Those machines are much too complicated for you to use. Oh, indeed. I'm talking about what is called a simple machine.
Simple?
Yes. Remember, a machine is any device that does work for you. There are 6 simple machines. The lever, the wedge, the pulley, the screw, the inclined plane, and the wheel and axle.
Now, where can we get one of these simple machines to help us lift Stanley's old building?
Anywhere, my boy. Simple machines are all around us. Come on out to the barn and I'll show you all of them. Now, here we use a simple machine to get water out of the well. Water is pretty heavy, and it will be hard work to pull a bucket of water out of the well. But by using the wheel and axle, it comes up easily. The simple machine has worked for us.
Fine. But we can't use a wheel and an axle to straighten out that building.
Not unless it was at the bottom of a well.
Chumley.
Well, here's another simple machine used for lifting things. It's called a pulley. Now, this big barrel is much too heavy for Chumley to lift.
Mm-hmm.
But when I hook on the pulley, even you can lift it, Tennessee.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, there's another very simple machine for moving heavy weights. It's called an inclined plane. I couldn't lift the barrel up to that platform, but if I use this board to make an inclined plane, I can roll the barrel up without any trouble at all. And this old piano stool is a good example of the 4th simple machine called the screw. Look closely and you'll see it's really an inclined plane wrapped around a shaft. When Chumley sits on the stool, I can give him a spin, and up he goes.
But, Mr. Whoopi, we can't use piano stools on Stanley's building. What simple machine can we use?
Patience, my boy. I'm coming to it in a second. First, I want to show you the most simple of the simple machines. It's called a wedge. See, if I hit this log with a hammer, nothing happens. But if I put the wedge to work and hit it, the log splits in 2.
Very interesting, Mr. Whoopi, but we don't want to split logs. We want to lift a building.
Of course, my boy. I'm going to show you how, with a simple machine called a lever, it can make you strong enough to lift Chumley with one hand. Think of it. Now, a lever needs a helper called a fulcrum. Now, we'll just use this log for the fulcrum and this board for the lever. Now, when Chumley stands on the short end and you push down on the long end, you can lift him with one hand.
Wow.
And the longer the lever, the more you can lift.
Gee, Tennessee, if you had a lever long enough, you could move the whole world.
Don't be ridiculous.
That's just what Archimedes said 2,000 years ago. He's right, Tennessee.
Then we'll have no trouble lifting up the corner of the building.
Not at all, my boy.
Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the greatest. Thanks a...
And so a short time later, our 2 friends were seated in the office of Phineas J. Whoopi, the man with all the answers.
How are we going to do it, Mr. Whoopi?
Well, now, we'll just cross that bridge when we come to it. Yes. First, I've got to show you some of the basics of bridge building.
Are you going to use the 3-dimensional blackboard, Mr. Whoopi?
No, Chumley. I'm going to show you with the famous Phineas J. Whoopi construction instruction kit. What kind of a bridge do you want to build?
The kind that crosses rivers.
Oh, of course, my boy. But there are many kinds. Let's see. There's stone arch and steel truss and cantilevered and bascule and suspension and pontoon.
What's the biggest and the best?
Well, most of the really big bridges today are suspension bridges.
Then that's what we want.
I don't know, my boy. They're pretty complicated structures. Just look here. Say this is one bank of the river. And over here on the other side of the desk is the other bank. Now, you'd have to erect 2 steel towers, one here and one here. So,
How high do they have to be?
well, it all depends on the size of the bridge. The ones that hold up the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco are 746 feet high.
Wow.
Then between these 2 towers, you'd have to hang huge cables like this. They have to be very big. Some of them are 3 feet thick. Now, you'll notice that from these main cables, there are smaller ones hanging down. These are attached to the girders which support the concrete roadbed. In other words, the bridge is suspended from the big cables.
That's why it's called a suspension bridge.
Precisely, my boy.
Well, how long are these the hanging bridges?
Well, the Golden Gate Bridge is 4,200 feet between the towers.
Gee, Mr. Whoopi, we don't need anything that long.
Well, now, how about a nice steel truss bridge? It's a very popular model, and it's much simpler to build. First, you put steel beams across. But even steel, strong as it is, could break under the weight of traffic. So it needs to be braced. The framework of steel which braces it is called a truss because of the way it's designed. It is very strong and light and can carry a great deal of weight.
Fine, but it doesn't look very easy to build.
Well, let's see. You'll need steel and rivets and cranes to move the steel.
Whoa! We've got to have that bridge up by 3:15. We can't do all that by then, and if we don't, there must be some kind of bridge we can build.
There is, my boy. The first bridge ever built, thousands of years ago.
Well, gee, it must be pretty rotten by now.
Chumley, what is it, Mr. Whoopi? What?
Well, it's very simple. First, you take your...
Finally, we'll find them and have us washing pots and pans for months.
And so you need a house for Howl, eh? Well, now, I wouldn't want the roof to fall in on you. Get it? Oh, yes.
Thanks, Mr. Whoopi.
The first question in building any house is material. What material do you want to use?
Zowie, Mr. Whoopi, I never thought of that. We don't have any material at all.
But of course you do, my boy. You have all these trees here which have been marked for cutting. Oh, that reminds me. Never cut a tree without permission. We can make Howler a fine log cabin doghouse. Here, let me show you. First, we chop down the trees and skin off the branches. That's it. But be careful with those axes. Tools are dangerous if they aren't used properly. Now, our next job is to peel the bark off the logs.
But gee, Mr. Whoopi, if we peel the logs, we'll have a doghouse with no bark.
Oh, yes, I get it. But peeling off the bark makes the logs less likely to harbor insects that might eat the wood. So it should be done. Now, our next step is to cut notches in both ends of the logs.
Why do we cut all those notches?
For strength, Tennessee. Watch how it makes the logs fit together tightly. And now you'll see why we've cut some of our logs shorter than others. This is so that the house will have windows and a door.
Neat, Mr. Whoopi. What next?
The roof. We'll use this large log as a ridge pole to hold up our roof. Then we nail on thin logs for framing and roof rafters. There. That should do it.
But look at all those holes in the roof, Mr. Whoopi. Poor old Howler might get wet.
Now, Howler, it's all right. We haven't put on the shingles yet. Since you can't buy any shingles, you'll have to cut your own, splitting them off a short, thick chunk of cedar like this. Now we must lay down our shingles. We begin at the edge of the roof, work across, and up. Each shingle must overlap to keep water from leaking into the house. And finally, we use mud to plug up any holes between the logs. That will help to keep Howler nice and warm.
Full speed ahead, Chumley.
And soon at the office of Mr. Whoopi, the man with all the answers...
And so you see, Mr. Whoopi, Jeroboa sails all over the place, but we can go in only one direction. We just have to learn how to sail. Can you help us?
Certainly, my boy, certainly. The first thing you must do is get a sailboat.
But we got a rowboat and a sail. Isn't that a sailboat?
Oh, my, no. A sailboat is a lot more than that. Here, let me look in my old sea chest. Here they are. This is like your boat, and this one is like a real sailboat.
That's just like Jeroboa's boat.
I thought so. Now, see the difference?
Well, the sail's a different shape.
Good, good, good. What else?
There's this doohickey on the back.
Good, good. That's the rudder, and this is the tiller. They steer the boat.
Why does the real sailboat have this big board sticking out the bottom?
Come out to the swimming pool, and I'll show you. Now, we'll use that fan to make a big wind. All right, Chumley? Put your boat in and see if she'll sail across the pool.
There she goes.
She's not sailing across. She's just being blown sideways.
Correct, my boy. That's because she has no centerboard. That's the big board sticking out of the bottom that you asked about. Now watch this one.
Look at her go. Right across the pool.
Well, a real centerboard can be pulled up through a slot when the boat gets into the shallow water. When the centerboard is underwater, it stops the boat from going sideways. And since it can't go sideways, it goes forward. For the same reason that this watermelon seed pops straight ahead when I squeeze it between my finger and thumb.
Can it sail forward, straight against the wind?
The watermelon seed?
No, Chumley. The sailboat.
No sailboat can do that, my boy. The best it can do is sail at an angle to the wind. This is called tacking. Here, I'll show you. There's the wind at that end. Now watch. When the boat comes directly into the wind, it falls off at an angle. Then it comes straight into the wind again and changes its angle to the other side.
Wow! That way you can sail anywhere, no matter which way the wind is blowing.
Precisely, my boy.
What about brakes?
My boy, sailboats don't have brakes. To stop a sailboat, just turn it into the wind. Since there's nothing for the wind to blow against anymore, the boat stops.
Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the great...
Soon our heroes arrived at the office of Phineas J. Whoopi, the man with all the answers.
So you see, Mr. Whoopi, I'll end up in the guardhouse if we don't find a surefire way to get our message to the fort.
Well, if you want a surefire method, you might try smoke signals. Oh, get it? Oh, yes. Well, what you need is a telegraph.
Tell her what?
The telegraph. It was invented by Samuel Morse in 1840, and it greatly speeded up communication.
How does the telegraph work?
Well, why don't we make a simple one for you right now? First, we take a flat piece of wood with a small block of wood nailed on it. In front of the small block, we put in 2 iron nails with insulated wires wrapped around them and joining them together.
Get all this down, Chumley.
Check.
Now, we nail this T-shaped piece of iron onto the block of wood so the top of the T is over the nails.
Gee, Mr. Whoopi, that looks so easy even I could do it.
Of course, my boy. Now, this is what is called our sounder. It receives the message. So from it, we run our wires and then build our message-sending device.
That's the part we'd need in the outpost.
Exactly! To build the sender, we use this small square of wood, 2 thumbtacks, and this small strip of flexible brass or copper. We put one end of our wire under the end of our copper strip and tack it down on the wood. Then we bend up the other end of the copper strip.
I still don't see how it works, Mr. Whoopi.
Patience, my boy, you'll see. Now here, under the up end of the copper strip, we tack down a piece of insulated wire.
Check.
Then all we have to do is take the wire from our receiving device and attach it to a battery. And then do the same with the wire from our sending device. And whoopee! We have our telegraph!
But how does it work?
Very simple. This copper strip is our key. Just press it down on the tack, and it completes our electric circuit.
Look! The that T-shaped piece of metal hit the nails and made noises.
Exactly. When our key completes the electric circuit, current flows to our nails and makes them magnets. And they pull down the sounder, the T-shaped piece of metal.
Can you send real messages, Mr. Whoopi?
Of course. Using this Morse code, you can send dots and dashes from your outpost. Someone else at the fort, using this same Morse code, can listen to the sounder and write down what letters the dots and dashes stand for.
Zowie, all we've got to do is run wire from the fort to our outpost. Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the greatest.
Two heroes were sitting in the office of Phineas J. Whoopi, the man with all the answers.
Rockets, eh? Well, put all your money in rockets, my boy, because they're going up. You get it? Yes. But I think we can find out something about them. Now, where did I put that three-dimensional blackboard? Here it is. Rockets began about 700 years ago in China. The Chinese who invented gunpowder found that if they put the powder in a paper tube and blocked both ends, they got a firecracker. They found the firecrackers very amusing. Then one day someone forgot to plug up one end of the firecrackers, and instead of exploding, it went... The rocket was born. Soon they found out that if they fastened a long stick to the back of the rocket, it would go in a straight line. But one ambitious gentleman fastened a number of rockets to his sedan chair in an effort to become the first astronaut.
What happened?
I know what happened.
Precisely, my boy. It was a very short flight to nowhere.
But gee, Mr. Whoopi, what does make a rocket go?
Everybody knows that, Chumley. That explosion coming out of the rear of the rocket pushes against the air and the rocket goes. Right, Mr. Whoopi?
Wrong, Tennessee. The air has nothing to do with it. In fact, it works much better in space where there is no air to resist it. That's because it uses Isaac Newton's third law of motion.
Law of motion?
Yes. The law says that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. Here, let me show you. Have you ever seen how a man stepping from a boat to the dock pushes the boat away at the same time? This is the action. Man toward dock. This is the reaction. Boat away from dock. Action, reaction.
What has that got to do with a rocket?
Well, let's look inside a rocket. When the fuel burns, it expands and has to rush out here. The action in this direction creates a reaction in this direction against the front wall of the rocket, which naturally pushes the rocket along. Action, reaction.
Great. Great. Let's go. How much do you think it would cost to build a rocket big enough for Chumley and me?
Oh, millions, my boy, millions.
Gee, Tennessee, we haven't even got 10 cents.
I know it, Chumley. Well, what are we going to do to show off that jerboa?
Well, I know how to take care of braggots like jerboa.
And soon they were seated in the office of Phineas J. Whoopi, the man with all the answers.
And it just won't work, Mr. Whoopi.
Yeah, and it better wait before Mr. Livingston gets back.
Yes. I imagine he'll be pretty steamed up. Get it? Oh, yes. Well, now, let's just use the old three-dimensional blackboard to learn a little bit about your locomotive. It's really just a steam engine on wheels. You see, when water is heated, it turns to steam. The steam engine works on a simple principle that steam occupies much more space than the water it came from. 1 quart of water makes hundreds of quarts of steam. The expanding steam furnishes power or pressure to run the engine. Very simple.
Not to me.
Well, then here, let me show you. First, let's start with the water. We have to have something to put it in, and this is called a boiler.
That's the long part of the engine.
Right, my boy, right. And it is filled with water. Now, to turn the water into steam, we need heat. So at one end of the boiler, there's a firebox with a very, very hot fire.
But how come the fire is at one end and the smokestack is at the other?
Good point, good point. Connecting the fire to the smokestack are a lot of pipes that run right through the water in the boiler. The smoke and hot gases from the fire go through the pipes and heat the water, turning it into steam. Then the engineer...
That's me.
Yes. The engineer opens a valve which lets the steam go down here to the piston. Let's take a closer look. First, the steam goes in this side and pushes the piston this way. Then it goes in the other side and pushes the piston back. That's what makes the engine go choo-choo-choo. The pistons are connected to the big drive wheels, and as the pistons go back and forth by way of the connecting rods, they make the wheels go round, and round, and round, and so puff, puff, toot, toot, off we go.
Phineas J. Whoopi,
What you need is some special protection to even up the battle.
protection?
A suit of armor, my boy. Let me show you on the three-dimensional blackboard. Men probably got the idea of armor from animals like the turtle or armadillo, who carry their armor with them.
You see that, Chumley? Animals had the idea first.
Oh, yes. Well, the first piece of armor for men was the shield. But soon the ancient warriors were not satisfied with just a shield. They wanted more protection.
Zowie! That's probably what would happen to us with Tiger Tornado.
Exactly, my boy. That's why the warriors developed armor which would cover their whole body. On their heads, they wore helmets. On their upper body, they wore cuirasses. And on their legs, they wore greaves.
But how could they see what they were doing with those helmets on?
Well, there was a visor which opened and closed. And even when the visor was closed, there were small openings in it so that the warrior could see and get air. Oh, yes. Actually, with the visors closed, two warriors meeting couldn't tell whether they were friends or enemies. So they had to raise their visors to see. And that, my boy, is where the soldier's salute of today actually got started.
Very interesting, Mr. Whoopi. But why did soldiers stop wearing suits of armor?
Because of the invention of gunpowder, my boy, armor was fine against arrows, or spears, or swords, but not against bullets.
I get it. But Tiger...
So, you want to give Howler obedience training, eh? Well, we'll have to bone up on that. Get it, bone? Oh, yes, I always like a little humor. How old is Howler?
About 8 months, I guess.
Oh, just perfect. Serious training should not begin before dogs are 6 or 8 months old. Now, the first thing to remember is that a dog learns by association. He learns to do those things which have pleasant results, and he learns not to do those things which have unpleasant results.
I get it. Pat him on the head when he does right, and clobber him when he does it wrong.
Oh, no. It's not necessary to hurt him, my boy, not at all. Just let him know you're displeased. Now, the most important piece of training equipment is the training collar. It is made of chain and is formed into a slip loop, like this. When the dog makes a mistake, you give a quick tug to the leash. The chain tightens around the dog's neck just for a second, and he knows he's been corrected. Oh, here, let me demonstrate with my dog, Pepper. Here, Pepper, sit. Good girl. Remember, it's very important to praise the dog after he's done something correctly.
Get that down, Chumley. Praise the dog.
The first thing Howler is going to learn is to heel. That means walking along on your left side, or your right side if you prefer, with his head at your knee, like this. Then we'll teach him to sit and stay and to lie down on command. Down, and finally to come when called. Come, Pepper! Oh, good girl, good girl. And then...
Wait a minute, Mr. Whoopi. How long is all this going to take?
Oh, well, with a little hard work, maybe a couple of months.
Months? Mr. Whoopi, we have to do it by the time the mayor comes back this afternoon.
Oh, my. Well, he's a very exceptional dog.
Oh, he's exceptional.
Yeah, and smart, too.
Well, then you may be able to teach him one thing in that short time.
Well, if we can teach him only one thing, we'd better teach him to sit still so he won't chase the mayor.
All right. To train a dog to sit, pull up on the leash, and at the same time push down on the hindquarters and say, sit. Always remember to praise him when he does it correctly. Oh, good, Pepper.
Does it matter what word you use when you want him to sit?
Well, no, not really. The important thing is to always use the same word. Dogs can't understand English, you know. You could even say, gesundheit. Yeah. Fabulous, fantastic, three-dimensional blackboard. Now, Chumley, we have to remember that our teeth are very important. Why, without them, we could only eat soft food. And there are even many words we couldn't pronounce clearly without our teeth.
That's probably been your trouble all along, Chumley. Bad teeth. No wonder you talk so funny.
Yes, that's why we're all so lucky to have special doctors who treat teeth.
Special doctors? Do you mean...
Yes, you guessed it, Chumley. Dentists. Chumley, my boy, come down from that chandelier. You have nothing to fear from a dentist. Today, dentists have many wonderful new instruments to make work on your teeth simple and pleasant.
Now get up, Chumley, and stand still.
Believe me, you don't have to worry about pain when a dentist pulls your tooth, Chumley. Today, they use Novocaine. It deadens the nerves and numbs the area around your tooth so that you won't feel any pain at all.
Are you absolutely sure, Mr. Whoopi?
Of course. You'll find the dentist is one of your best friends. He can do marvelous things for your teeth. He can stop a tooth from aching.
Oh, boy, mine sure ached all right.
Dentists can straighten your teeth, too. They can put in an artificial tooth where a real one has been lost. Why, they can even make whole sets of teeth for people who no longer have their own.
Zowie, Mr. Whoopi. Dentists are really something.
They certainly are, and we're very lucky to have them. Why, only 250 years ago, there were no real dentists as we know them today, although dentistry is as old as any branch of science which treats our health.
No dentist? What did people do for a toothache?
Well, in very early times, medical doctors treated teeth along with other parts of the body. But they weren't really able to help very much. And then during the Middle Ages, barbers took over the job of pulling teeth.
Barbers?
Gee, they might have got mixed up and pulled out your hair and cut off your teeth.
Oh, yes, very funny, yes. But that's all in the past now. Today, a dentist has to be highly trained. He must have at least 6 years of college education and then take a special examination to receive a license to practice dentistry.
What did I tell you, Chumley? A dentist is just what you need.
And I know a fine one, my boy. I'll call right now and make an appointment. Honey, eh? Well, now, that is a sticky problem. But you had the right idea, Tennessee. Honeybees do make honey. But even with honeybees, it takes more than one bee. It takes a whole colony of maybe 75,000 bees to produce a good supply of honey.
Wowee.
Now, in every colony, there are 3 kinds of bees. There is one queen bee who lays all the eggs. There are the male bees called drones who do almost nothing at all. And there are the female bees called workers who do everything but lay eggs.
They're the ones who make the honey?
Right. Let me show you on the 3-dimensional blackboard. Here's a beehive built in a hollow tree. Now, a worker called a field bee leaves the hive and looks for plants and flowers which contain a sweet stuff called nectar. When she has collected all the nectar she can hold, she flies back to the hive. Inside the hive, she does an amazing dance, which tells the other bees exactly where they can find the nectar. While they fly off, our bee turns her load of nectar over to a house bee who stores it in a cell of the honeycomb. The honey is left to ripen there for a few days, and then the house bees seal it up with wax, and there it stays until...
Until we come along and get it. Phineas J. Whoopi, you're
The man with all the answers.
So you see, Mr. Whoopi, we can't go digging up the entire zoo. We've got to find out exactly where Jack the Joker buried his treasure.
Buried treasure, eh? Oh, where did you dig that idea up? Well, now, I'll have to take a look at the whole problem. Get it? The whole... Yeah. Well, let's just see that piece of paper.
Here it is. We can't figure it out. Just a lot of ridiculous numbers and letters.
Yes, well, the letters are points of the compass, and the numbers refer to steps. This is what it means. Start at the big rock and walk straight north for 15 steps. Turn west and walk 20 steps. Then turn south and walk 5 steps.
Oh, that's easy.
Yeah, but how do we know which is the north and which is east and
Don't be ridiculous, Chumley. Everybody knows where north is. It's right, I'm
afraid you can't guess, my boy. If you're going to follow Jack the Joker's directions, you will need a compass.
A compass? What's that?
An instrument that can tell you in what direction you're walking.
But we don't have one of those.
I'll show you how to make one. All you need is a needle, a magnet, a bowl of water, and a piece of cork. The inside of the pop bottle cap will do nicely. Now stroke the point of the needle along the magnet, and it too will become a magnet.
How many times do you have to stroke it?
10 or 15 times should do it. Now float the piece of cork on the water and carefully balance the needle across the cork. So, see what happens?
Look, Kenneth, you're turning.
Now it's stopped.
What direction do you think it's pointing?
North?
Right. The Earth is like a huge magnet, and the magnetized point of the needle is attracted to the magnetic North Pole, so no matter which way you turn it, the needle will always point north.
How about east and west?
And south.
Well, when you're facing north as the needle is pointing, east is always on your right, and west is always on your left. And, of course, south is behind you.
Now we can follow Jack the Joker's directions and find exactly where the treasure is. Phineas J.
So, you want to know how to make a recording, eh? Well, now, that's a very sound subject. Oh, yes, and I just happen to have a copy of the original phonograph invented by Thomas Edison.
How does it work?
Well, the principle that makes recording possible is vibration. You talk into this, and that makes a needle vibrate here. And that needle marks the vibrations on this piece of tinfoil.
You mean the needle sort of writes the sounds on that tinfoil?
Exactly, Tennessee. That's what phonograph means, sound writing. All you have to do is wrap the piece of foil around this little tube, then turn this crank as you speak into this megaphone. A megaphone is a simple instrument for making sounds louder or for aiming them. Now talk into the little end.
Hello out there!
You see, now when you're recording, you talk into the big end of the megaphone, and it aims your voice at the needle and makes it vibrate. And as you turn this crank, the needle writes the sound on the tinfoil. Here, Chumley, say something into the megaphone.
Gee, Mr. Whoopi, I can't think of a thing.
Fine. Listen.
Gee, Mr. Whoopi, I can't think of a thing.
Great, Mr. Whoopi. Now we can make a hit record of our song.
A hit record? The only way you could have a hit record is to be hired by a big recording company. They would put out a modern record like this and sell it all across the country.
A recording company, eh? All right. If that's what it takes, we'll go out and get hired. Thanks, Mr. Whoopi.
But wait.
Gold mine.
I did. You see, my boy, there are two kinds of gold deposits. One is called a lode, and it must be dug out of the ground like coal. The other kind is called a placer deposit, and it is often found in and around streams and rivers.
But how do you get it out?
You wash it out, my boy, with one of these contraptions over here.
It looks just like a big pan to me.
That's just what it is. And when you use it, it's called panning for gold. Here's how it works. You scoop up some sand and gravel from the bottom of the stream and swirl it around, like this. Naturally, the water and the sand and gravel spill over the sides, but the gold nuggets are much heavier and stay in the bottom of the pan.
How big are these nuggets, Mr. Whoopi?
Well, the biggest I ever heard of weighed 248 pounds.
Wow!
But most nuggets are pretty small and look like this.
Gee, look, Chumley. Real gold.
And, of course, sometimes the particles are so small they look like grains of sand. Then it's called gold dust. Whee! Well, why don't you boys borrow this pan and a couple of shovels and follow that map and get that gold?
Phineas J. Whoopi, flying straight up. He said...
Well, planes that fly straight up are called helicopters, and they look like this. This large propeller is like a rotating wing, and it lets the plane take off straight up.
But how can you get anywhere if you just go straight up?
Well, my boy, once in the air, the pilot simply changes the angle of the propeller to make it go forward, or to the right, or to the left.
That looks like fun, Mr. Whoopi.
Oh, it is. And we can build a little model that will show you exactly how it works.
Oh, boy, a toy. Oh, do I love toys.
First, we cut ourselves a large propeller from an aluminum foil pie plate. Then we glue the propeller to an empty spool like this. Next, we bend the propeller so that it has what is called pitch to lift it up.
Looks fine, Mr. Whoopi, but where's the motor?
Right here, Tennessee. This piece of string. We wrap it around the spool, then we put the spool over a pencil, and we're ready. Just pull the string, and whoopee, it flies! it flies. But I think the three-dimensional blackboard can show us a few things about oil. Now, the first thing to know is that the kind of oil we are talking about is called petroleum, which means rock oil, and it's usually found deep underground where it collects in large pools, in spaces between layers of rock, like this.
How do you get it out of the ground, Mr. Whoopi?
You have to drill for it.
How deep?
There's no telling. But the first oil well drilled in the United States was only 69 feet, but the deepest well is more than 4 miles.
4 miles? You see, it's no use. That's too deep. Besides, how do we know there's any oil under the land?
Well, you don't really, but your chances are good. You see, your new house is right in the middle of what is called an oil field. Now, often these deposits of oil are very large, like big underground lakes, and all of the land over them is called an oil field because no matter where you drill, you are bound to strike oil.
I've seen pictures of oil fields, and there are towers all over them.
Yes, those are called derricks, and they hold up the long sections of drill pipe. At the bottom of the pipe, there is a bit with sharp teeth that can cut through rock. A motor whirls it around, and down it goes. Section after section of pipe is added until the bit hits the oil.
Then how do they get the oil up to the surface?
Well, usually it is pumped up, but sometimes there is a natural gas mixed in with the oil, and it can shoot the oil high into the air. Then the well is called a gusher.
Yeah, but what good is all this petroleum?
Oh, my. Our civilization couldn't get along without it. From petroleum, we get gasoline for cars and planes, and kerosene and lubricating oil and grease and paraffin and plastics and tar and asphalt for making roads. Oh, my, yes. Oil is so valuable that it's called black gold. If you strike oil, Freddy Cat, you'll be a very rich cat indeed.
There, Freddy Cat, what more do you need? Come on, we're going to Texas. Thanks, Mr. Whoopi.
So, you want to know something about parachuting, eh? Well, we wouldn't want to fall down on the job, now would we? Get it? Fall? Yes. First, let's make a small model of a parachute.
Great, Mr. Whoopi. What do we use?
Well, we take an ordinary handkerchief and 4 pieces of string, all the same length. We tie one end of each piece of string to one of the 4 corners of the handkerchief, like this.
Gee, Mr. Whoopi, that looks easy.
It is, my boy. Next, we tie the 4 other ends of string to this toy soldier, or any kind of way to act as the man. And now, we're ready. We fold the parachute carefully and toss it into the air, and whoopee! It floats gently to the ground.
Look at that, Chumley. Nothing to it.
Of course, a real parachute is much bigger than our model. Usually about 24 feet across. It spreads out so far that it can't push the air out of the way easily. And that resistance is what makes the parachute float down slowly.
It sure is big, all right, Mr. Whoopi.
Yes, indeed. That's why a jumper can have a parachute spread out over him in a plane. The parachute must be folded up, but arranged so that it can open easily. Then it's put into a pack attached to a harness the jumper wears. When the jumper makes his leap, he lets himself fall until he's clear of the plane. And then he pulls a little cord attached to the parachute, and whoopee! It opens up.
Thanks a million, Mr. Whoopi. We're making our jump this afternoon.
What? Why, a telescope, of course.
A telescope?
Yes, indeed. You can sit in the room across the street and keep an eye on Mr. Hood all the time.
But the room across the street is a long way away. How does the telescope work?
Well, a telescope has 2 lenses. The one at the far end is called the object lens. Actually, the telescope substitutes this object lens for your eye. And since it's larger than your eye, it can see more.
Sure. I can see that.
Yes, of course. The object lens collects the light rays coming from the object you're watching. It bends the light rays toward the other, smaller lens.
And that's the one you put your eye on, huh?
Yes, Tennessee. That's called the eyepiece lens. It spreads out the light so that you can see an enlarged image of the object you're watching.
But gee, Mr. Whoopi, how do you hold the 2 lenses?
Oh, you don't, my boy. The lenses are held in 2 or more sliding tubes like this. The tubes are movable so that you can make the telescope longer or shorter in order to properly focus it. Just look through this at Chumley.
He's all fuzzy looking.
Oh, that's right. Now slide the tube slowly.
Zowie, it clears right up. Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the greatest.
Well, how about a water wheel? They're easy to make, and they can give you a lot of power. Thousands of years ago, men learned how to use the power of water to turn water wheels. There are different kinds of water wheels. One has buckets around the edge. It's called an overshot water wheel because the water comes out of a trough, fills the buckets, and makes them heavy enough to turn the wheel.
And when the wheel turns, it can be used to operate other machines.
Absolutely right, my boy. Now, the other kind of water wheel has paddles around the edge. It is called an undershot wheel because the water flows under the wheel and pushes against the paddles and makes the wheel turn.
Which is easier to build?
Well, I'd say the undershot wheel. All you really need is an axle and some paddles. And, of course, a good stream or brook to make it go.
Lucky thing we've got a stream right next to the laundry. Mr. Whoopi, you've saved us again.
Certainly, my boy. Men have been using windmills to do their work for them for hundreds of years. Well, you see, a windmill is a big wheel with blades attached to it, like this. When the wind blows, it pushes against the blades, which make the wheel go round. You see?
I get it. Just like a pinwheel.
Exactly. And the wheel turns the shaft, which by using pulleys or gears can turn other things like pumps or grindstones or washing machines.
But will it really do the work?
Oh, my, yes. Why, just look at all the windmills they use in Holland. There, the land is so low that seawater keeps coming in and has to be pumped out. For many years, all the pumping was done by windmills. Windmills can do a lot of work.
Sounds like just what we need. Thanks a million, Mr. Whoopi. Come on.
Let me show you a few facts about eyes and eyeglasses. As you know, an eye is a round ball with a lens on front. Pictures come through the lens and are focused on the back of the eye, which is called the retina.
That's just like a camera works.
Precisely, my boy. But sometimes the lens gets a little out of shape and focuses the picture in the wrong place. If it focuses here, it's called nearsightedness, which means that things far away are fuzzy. If it focuses here, it's called farsightedness, which means that things up close are fuzzy. And if it focuses here, it's called astigmatism, and everything is fuzzy.
But where do the glasses come into the picture?
Well, glasses are simply lenses which are used to correct these conditions. A special lens is used for each condition so that the picture will be focused in the right place. Oh, yes.
How do I know if I've got one of these conditions? Can you tell me?
Certainly not. That's a job for a licensed doctor or optometrist. Take a look at our three-dimensional blackboard and see how our eyes make movies possible. You see, light from whatever we're watching enters our eye and forms a picture on the living screen at the back of each eye. This screen is called a retina.
Get that down, Chumley. The retina.
Now, the retina holds each picture just a fraction of a second after the picture is no longer being formed on it. So if separate pictures are moved very fast before our eyes, we don't see any break in them.
And that's how real movies work?
Well, that's the general principle. Here, let's make our own little imitation movie on this small notepad. Up in the right-hand corner, starting on the back page, we draw a little figure with arms down at his sides. Then on the next page forward, in the same position, we draw the figure with arms overhead. Then next with arms down, then over his head, up, down, until we reach the first page of the book. Then, if we flip the pages over, whoopee, the picture moves.
Gee, that's fun.
And that's what a movie camera does. Takes pictures so fast and close together that there isn't much difference between them. Then, when the film is shown with a projector which runs at proper speed, It's exactly like the real movement.
Sure looks easy.
It is, my boy. And today they have wonderful movie cameras that anyone can operate. Snow, is it? Well, now, let's see whether we can get the drift of that. First, we have to know what snow is.
Frozen rain?
No, but snow comes from clouds just as rain does. Snow is frozen water vapor. When the water vapor freezes, it forms tiny crystals of ice, which we call snowflakes. A snowflake may be just one crystal, or it may be many sticking together. Up close, we can see that the snowflake has 6 sides, and that none of them are exactly alike. But they're all beautiful.
But how do you make snow?
Just like nature does, my boy. Here, let me show you. Snow machines very often look exactly like machine guns, except the 2 hoses are fastened to the gun. One hose carries water, and one carries compressed air. The water and air are mixed inside the gun and are forced out under pressure in the form of fine mist or vapor.
Just like a cloud.
Right. And if the temperature outside is below 27 degrees, the water vapor freezes, and whoopee, it snows, and you can cover the whole hill.
So you see, Mr. Whoopi, we've got to have a radio, but we don't have any money to buy one. Could we make one?
Of course, my boy. I'll show you how to make a crystal set, the kind I used to make when I was a lad.
Does it need batteries?
No batteries, and you don't have to plug it into the wall either.
Then how can it work?
First, you have to understand what radio is. Long ago, in 1887, a German named Heinrich Hertz invented a machine that could send waves of electricity through the air. These became known as Hertzian waves. We know them today as radio waves because they radiate out in all directions.
I get it. Just like when you drop a stone into water.
Precisely, my boy. Now, we can't see or feel or hear these waves, so we need something called a detector to detect the waves. Back in the old days, the best detectors were minerals that came from the ground.
Like coal?
Well, not coal, but lots of other minerals, like this little galena crystal.
You mean I can just hold it up to my ear?
Not exactly. We need some other equipment. Look here. This is called a detector stand. At this end is the holder for the crystal detector. At this end is a rod with a fine wire spring called a cat's whisker. Now, to these little posts, we connect a pair of earphones.
Now can we hear the radio waves?
Not yet. First, we have to connect a very important part called the antenna, which is a wire about 75 feet long running outside the house. The antenna helps collect the radio waves and bring them into the crystal detector. Now, by moving the cat's whisker over the surface of the crystal, we can find a sensitive spot. Whoopee!
I hear music.
Why no batteries or electricity?
Because radio waves themselves are electricity.
Boy, this is just what we need.
Take it, my boy. But don't forget, you need a long wire antenna.
Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the greatest. And that's the whole story, Mr. Whoopi. Chumley has forgotten who he is.
Well, my boy, if what you say is true, Chumley may have amnesia.
Amnesia? What's that?
Amnesia means loss of memory. Chumley may have injured his brain in a fall, and that could cause amnesia.
Zowie.
You see, my boy, our brain is very important to us. Our body would be worthless without a brain to make it work.
How does our brain make our body work, Mr. Whoopi?
Well, it sends messages to other parts of our body by way of nerves. If we want to bend down and pick up a stone, our brain sends messages to the muscles in our back. And then it sends messages to our arm and fingers so that we can reach and pick up the stone.
Zowie. The brain must really be complicated.
Oh, it is, my boy. Of course, in the case of Chumley, a walrus, the brain is not so complicated as it is in human beings. But it is similar. Let's take a closer look at the human brain. It's divided into 3 parts. First, there is the medulla. This part of the brain controls breathing and the beating of the heart.
I see. The medulla.
That's right. And the next part of the brain is the cerebellum. This helps to make our muscles move smoothly.
I've got that. The cerebellum.
But the largest part of the human brain is the cerebrum. The cerebrum is the part which makes us able to smell and see and hear.
See and hear? But what about our eyes and ears? Don't they do that?
My boy, even with the finest eyes and ears in the world, we couldn't see or hear at all without the cerebrum. And this is also the part of the brain which lets us remember. Well, strangely enough, a lump of coal or the lead in an ordinary pencil is the same material as a diamond.
They sure don't look the same.
No, my boy, but they are all carbon. Only the diamond is highly crystallized carbon. Most scientists agree that diamonds were formed some 100 million years ago, when hot liquid rock underground was subjected to terrific heat and pressure, causing the rock to become diamonds.
If diamonds are only rocks, Mr. Whoopi, why do they cost so much money?
For two reasons, my boy. First, because of their great reflection of light. That's why they make such beautiful jewels. And second, because of their hardness. Diamonds are actually the hardest substance known to man. That's why they're used for tools such as drills that can bore through stone.
Where do they dig up diamonds, Mr. Whoopi?
They have found some in India and some in Brazil, and even a few in the United States. But the really important diamond mines are in Africa.
Hear that, Chumley? What we have to do is get to Africa and dig up the diamonds.
Now, hold on, Tennessee. Diamonds are big business. There are deep mines with large shafts, just as for coal mining. And I'm afraid the mine owners wouldn't let you in.
Gee, that's not very friendly-like.
Well, even if they did let you in, and even if you did find a diamond, there would be lots of work to be done before it looked like a jewel. Cutting, shaping, cleaning and polishing. And all this must be done by highly trained experts.
And that lets us out, Chumley. It looks like we're licked.
Perhaps I can help, Tennessee. Why do you need time? Here, let me explain it to you with a three-dimensional blackboard. It was in 1895 that a German scientist named Wilhelm Röntgen discovered X-rays. His discoveries led to the modern X-ray tube. A glass tube with the air pumped out, and inside this tube, electrons are fired at a special little target. And this causes the tube to give off X-rays. Rays which will pass through many, many substances and then can be reflected on a chemically coated screen.
Very interesting, Mr. Whoopi. But what good are these X-rays?
They can do many things, my boy, even help to cure diseases. But our interest now is in the special pictures they can take.
Pictures?
Yes, indeed. Now suppose a man has a broken arm and goes to his doctor. Well, the doctor can't see how the broken bone looks, so he uses an X-ray machine. The man's arm is put between the X-ray tube and special film, and the X-rays are turned on. Now, X-rays can go through flesh much more easily than they can through bone. So this makes the bones cast a dark shadow and show up clearly. Then, when the negative film is developed, the darkest portions become the lightest, and this makes the bones very clear. See the break?
Sure, Mr. Whoopi, but we don't have any broken bones.
Of course not, my boy. But the X-ray machine can also show anything unusual in the stomach, such as a coin.
Zap!
Here, let me show you on the three-dimensional blackboard. Surveying is very old. The Egyptians used it every year to find the property lines after the Nile River had flooded and washed away all the boundary markers. And, of course, every schoolboy knows that George Washington was a surveyor.
Gee, I thought he was president.
Chumley!
Hey, look, all this historic stuff is okay, but how about our line? How's this surveying stuff going to tell us where that is?
I'm coming to that. According to the map of your property, the line starts here at Boundary Rock.
We know that. The question is, which way does it go?
Why, the direction is written right here on your map. It says the line goes north 67 degrees east.
Yeah, but how do we know for sure which direction that is?
You have to use a transit, which is the surveyor's most important instrument. Look at this one I have over here. You can see that it's a small telescope mounted on a tripod. The telescope can swing around in any direction. Attached to the telescope is a scale which tells us the angle that the telescope is pointing. All we have to do is move the transit around until it is pointing in the direction indicated on the map and...
And then you look through it?
Right, my boy. Put your transit at Boundary Rock. Set it at the correct angle, send Chumley out, and when you see him, the line between the rock and Chumley will be the right boundary line.
Green thumb, eh? Oh, yes. Well, now, I'm sure we can cover the ground on that. Get it? Ground? Oh, yes, I always like to inject a little humor. Well, let's see what the three-dimensional blackboard has to say about that. The first thing to do in planting anything is to prepare the ground. This is done by breaking up the soil with a tool called a plow. Early man used a forked stick, which he scraped along the ground. Then he developed a hoe and a spade, and even a man-powered plow. Later, he used horses or oxen to pull his plow. But now, of course, we use tractors.
But gee, Tennessee, we haven't got any tractor.
No, Chumley, but we can hook up Stanley. Hook up Stanley, that's pretty good.
Yes. Well, the plow blade cuts into the earth and turns it over to one side. The groove that it cuts is called a furrow. Cutting furrows breaks up the hard soil and lets the sun and air get in. But the plow breaks the earth into fairly large lumps. So the farmer now uses a tool called a harrow, which is dragged over the plowed field to crumble up the large lumps and level the surface to make it ready for planting. Get it?
Remember that, Chumley. First plow, then harrow.
Right. It used to be that men walked through the fields with big sacks and cast the seed over the ground. That's where we get the word broadcasting. But the modern farmer uses a machine called a drill, which places the seed evenly in the ground exactly as deep as the farmer wants it, and then covers it over with earth.
Great. And that's all there is to it.
Oh, no, my boy. The farmer's work is never really done. For instance, once the seeds begin to come up, the garden has to be cultivated with a hoe or a mechanical cultivator. That means removing the weeds from around the plant and loosening the soil so that it will hold more water, and so that the roots can grow more freely and get more air. Then, if there's plenty of water and sunshine and air, the plants will grow and whoopee, you'll have a garden.
Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the...
The platypus is a very interesting animal. It's not a fish, not a duck, not a beaver, not a snake. And yet, in some ways, it is like all of them.
That sounds like that funny-looking platypus, all right.
Yes, indeed. You see, the platypus is much like a fish in the way that it swims. But is also like a duck, because it has webbed feet and a bill instead of a nose. It even lays eggs as the duck does. But it only lays 1, 2, or 3 eggs at one nesting. And when the eggs hatch, the platypus nurses its young like a mammal, such as the beaver. It also has a tail much like the beaver's.
But how is the platypus like a snake?
Well, unlike yours or mine, a snake's body temperature changes with the heat or cold of its surroundings. And so does the platypus. In fact, it is more a link between mammals and reptiles than it is like anything else.
Very interesting, Mr. Whoopi. Now, the platypus we saw said he was going back home. Where would that be?
In Australia, my boy. That's where the platypus comes from. They live in burrows in the back of quiet, deep pools.
Yeah, like our swimming pool.
The platypus stays in his burrow most of the day and comes out only at night to feed in the water.
What the platypuses eat, Mr. Whoopi?
Oh, water insects, worms, and especially shellfish.
Well, that ought to do it. Chumley, we'd better head for Australia and bring back that platypus, or Stanley Livingston will have our heads.
Good luck, Tennessee, and you'll need it. The platypus is very, very hard to catch.
Maybe so, but Tennessee Tuxedo will not fail.
Now, a police force may only be one man, such as a sheriff in a small town,
or it may be thousands of men in a large city like New York.
We only got 4 men, counting us too.
Yes, well, large police forces are organized into several divisions, such as the Detective Division or the Communications Division. But the real backbone of any police force is the Uniform Division.
The real backbone, eh? Well, that sounds like us. Make a note of that, Chumley. The first thing we need is uniforms. Now, how does this Uniform Division operate?
Well, the policeman makes his rounds either in a police car or on foot. He performs many services, giving directions to strangers or helping citizens in distress. But mainly, his job is to act quickly whenever there's trouble.
Calling car 54, bank robbery at 5th and Main.
The policeman has been thoroughly trained in how to answer such calls. When you hear a siren, you can help by pulling your car quickly to the curb and stopping, or if on foot, by staying on the sidewalk. He is ready to risk his own life to help others. And he knows how to overpower dangerous criminals. Also, he knows the importance of being careful in taking any prisoner.
Gee, Mr. Whoopi, policemen are really great, huh?
Oh, yes, indeed, Chumley. We're very lucky in this country to have so many fine men serving us as police officers.
Okay, Mr. Whoopi, I think we've got all we need for now.
But wait, Tennessee, there's no one perfect form of exercise. Various kinds are needed for all-around development and health. Why, Chumley can exercise right at home.
Good. How?
Yes. Why, calisthenics.
Sounds like some kind of medicine.
Why, no, Chumley. Calisthenics is a form of exercise. Some people call this setting up exercise. This type of exercise is good for those who can't get any other kind of daily exercise.
How long do they take?
Oh, about 15 minutes a day. In the morning before breakfast is a good time. Here, let me show you on the 3-dimensional blackboard. This first one is a warm-up exercise called the stretch. See? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is called the twist, and it will help take some of those inches off Chumley's middle. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4.
How many times should he do these, Mr. Whoopi?
Well, just as in all other types of exercise, the amount needed depends upon your age and sex. Now, with you, Chumley, start with 5 each and then work up to 10. Try this one. It's called a leg lift. Do it slowly. 1 up, 2, 3, 4. It's a good idea to count out loud. This last one is a dandy. It takes a little effort, Chumley, but it will help get you in top condition. Watch. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You do these exercises every morning, eat well, get plenty of sleep, and you'll be in top condition in no time.
I'll see that he does.
And you exercise too, Tennessee. Everyone should exercise every day, even when you get older, if the exercise is mild and preferably some kind of recreation. Actually, both group and individual sports to suit different ages make ideal exercise for everyone, from the hardest physical games to simply walking. Yes. Well, let's take a look at our 3-dimensional blackboard. Locks have been important for many, many years. Why, there was a key-operated lock in Egypt almost 4,000 years ago.
Zowie, that's a long time.
Oh, yes, indeed. It was a huge wooden device operated by a large wooden key, somewhat like a toothbrush, with only a few bristles. The bristles would push up the locking pins and let the door open.
Gee, Mr. Whoopi, that's an awful big key to carry around.
Oh, it is indeed. But today we have locks with much smaller keys. The most popular of these was perfected about 1868 by Linus Yale, Jr. The Yale lock has pins which are attached to springs that keep the pins pressed down into holes in a cylinder below.
How does the key manage to open the lock?
It has notches on one side, and these notches fit the uneven way the pins are raised. So the key lifts the pins and lets the cylinder turn, and whoopee, the door is unlocked.
I get it, Mr. Whoopi. For a lock like that, you have to have a key.
Oh, yes. A key comes with every lock we buy, unless, of course, it's a combination lock such as they have on many safes.
Safes. That's what we're interested in, Mr. Whoopi. How does a combination lock work?
Well, it's called a combination lock because a certain combination of numbers are needed to open it. A knob is turned according to the combination. For example, it might be right to 5. That releases one circular bolt. Left to 3. That releases a second bolt. And right to 4. That releases a third bolt. And whoopee, the safe opens.
But Mr. Whoopi will tell us.
How to make paint, eh? Well, now, that's a colorful question. Get it? Colorful? Oh, yeah. Paint is a mixture of liquid and colored powder. The powder is called pigment, and the liquid is called a vehicle. In the paint factory, the vehicle is measured into a big mixing tank. Then the pigment is added. In the mixing tank, steel cylinders roll against each other to grind and mix the vehicle and pigment together. Then it is strained and put into the filling machine, which automatically puts it into can. When the paint is put on the wall, the vehicle dries into a hard film, which holds the color to the surface and also protects the wall.
Great. But what are these vehicles?
And the pigments?
Vehicles can be linseed oil, varnishes, natural resins, artificial resins. Pigments can be white lead, red lead, chrome green, mica, clay.
Hey, we can't get all that stuff.
What are we going to do?
Well, there's another kind of paint. Prehistoric men used to use colored clay mixed with water, but...
Hooray! We've got plenty of clay right at the pond in the zoo.
Yeah, and it's the right color, too.
Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the greatest. Thanks a million.
Now, the first thing to do is to prepare the surface that is going to be painted. That means scraping off any loose paint, and this is very important. You can use a paint scraper or a wire brush to do the job. There. Now, with the surface clean, you are ready to apply the paint. There are 3 ways to put on paint: brushes, rollers, and spray guns.
We've got all 3.
Good! Let's try the brush first. Dip the tip of the brush into the can of paint and then use a fan-like motion to put the paint on the wall. So, take another brushful and put it on the dry area and brush it into the wet area. See?
Great, Mr. Whoopi. But what about the roller?
With a roller, we pour some of the paint into a special pan. Then we roll the roller in the pan, and the little hairs on the roller pick up the paint. We roll it on the wall, and whoopee, it's painted.
Gee, that looks easy.
It is. But look how easily the spray gun works. The paint is poured into this little can, and then compressed air forces it out in tiny drops, which cover the surface very quickly.
All right, Mr. Whoopi, we've got it now. Thanks a million.
How does it work?
Well, there are several kinds of navigation. There's celestial navigation, which uses the stars as guideposts, and there's piloting, which uses landmarks as guideposts. Then there's another form of navigation I'm going to show you, which is called dead reckoning. Now, the first thing we need is a chart.
Mark that down, Chumley. Chart. What's a chart?
A chart is a map of the ocean, like this. We also need a compass and a clock. Now, supposing we want to go from this seaport here to this point out in the ocean. First, we draw a straight line between the 2 points. So, that line is called our course. It tells us in what direction to sail. See? On the chart, there is an arrow to show us where north is. Now, we look at our line and see that it points west. So we know that to get to where we want to go, we must sail west. That is our course, and the compass here enables us to make sure we stay on that course. The line also tells us how far we have to sail.
What about the clock?
Well, we use the clock to tell us when we get to where we're going.
How does it do that? Did the alarm go off?
Oh, no, my boy. It works like this. If the distance you have to go is 100 miles and your speed is 10 miles an hour, then you know that in 10 hours you'll be exactly where you want to be if you stay on the course.
Phineas J. Whoopi.
Oh, learn about the Calliope, eh? Why, that's music to my ears. For the Calliope is a musical instrument.
A musical instrument?
Oh, yes, indeed. It's used on river steamboats, in carnivals and circuses, too. It's sort of a steam piano.
Well, gee, Mr. Whoopi, Tennessee can play the piano.
Well, then he should be able to play the Calliope. Here, let me get the three-dimensional blackboard and tell you all about it. It was in the year 1855 that a man named Joshua C. Stoddard of Worcester, Massachusetts, first patented the Calliope. As Mr. Stoddard finally worked it out, the Calliope was a series of 32 whistles which were played by steam.
You mean steam, like with a steam engine on a locomotive?
Oh, yes. At one end of the Calliope, there is a boiler and a smokestack. When steam is built up here, this knob is turned, and the steam passes into a long horseshoe-shaped pipe, on top of which are all of the whistles.
But, gee, where does the piano part come in?
Simple, my boy. At the other side of the horseshoe-shaped pipe, there's a keyboard with brass keys to withstand the heat of the steam.
And I have to play those brass keys to make the Calliope play, right?
Exactly. Each of the keys is connected to a rod. So when the key is pressed down, the rod moves, and at the other end, it opens one of the whistles. This causes steam to rush into the whistle. And whoopee! A musical note is heard.
But don't all the notes sound just alike?
Not at all, my boy. Each of the whistles, just like the pipes of an organ, is a different size, from very short and thin, which makes a high-pitched note, up to a very long and big round whistle, which makes a low-pitched note.
I get it now.
First, let's understand how a faucet works. A faucet is really a valve to control the flow of water. It has four main parts: the handle, the stem, the washer, and the seat. See how the water flows along the pipe, through the faucet, and out. Now, if we want to stop the water, we turn the handle, which turns the stem, which forces the washer into the seat, and now the water can't get through.
But why did Mr. Maninoff go drip, drip, drip?
Because the washer is probably worn out around the edge and lets just a little bit of the water through.
I see. Then if it's worn out, all we have to do is throw away the faucet and get a new one.
No, my boy. All you have to do is replace the washer. Here, let me show you. First, take off the handle, then remove the stem. Now, on the bottom of the stem, you'll find the washer, which is fastened on by a screw. Take it out, put in a new washer, and your faucet will be as good as new.
Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the greatest. Come on, Chumley. Oh, yes. How do you fix a broken pipe?
Glue?
Oh, no, my boy. Plumbers fasten pipes together with special fittings like these. The straight ones are called sleeves. The bent ones are called elbows. These are called Ys, and these are called Ts. They screw on to the ends of the pipe, and by using them in combination, you can make the pipe go in any direction you want it to. Of course, no one has actually ever seen a dinosaur. They disappeared about 60 million years ago, long before there were people on Earth.
Then how do we know there were any dinosaurs, Mr. Whoopi?
We know, Chumley, because of the scientists who search for ancient footprints and who dig for bones.
Through their work, we have learned that there were more than 5,000 kinds of dinosaurs.
Zowie!
Oh, some were small, some were medium-sized, and some were giants. And the largest were larger than any other animals that ever lived on land.
Gee, Mr. Whoopi, they look ferocious.
Well, actually, some were very gentle beasts. The Brontosaurus and Diplodocus, for example, were gentle as cows. They ate nothing but plants. But some of the dinosaurs were ferocious flesh eaters. Probably the most terrible of all was the Tyrannosaurus. It was 18 to 20 feet tall and had teeth several inches long. It walked on its hind legs and used its sharp claws on its front feet to help kill other animals.
That's not like the one at the zoo. He looked more like that Bronto whatchamacallit.
Oh, the Brontosaurus. Its name means thunder lizard, for it was so big that when it walked, it made a noise like thunder. Stretching out from the huge body was a long neck and a long tail, making the Brontosaurus about 70 feet long and weighing 35 tons.
Zowie! That's more than Chumley weighs.
Oh, yes, many, many times more. But, of course, the Brontosaurus, like all the dinosaurs, was very stupid. Though it weighed 35 tons, its brain weighed less than a pound.
I'm sure that Brontosaurus is the one in the zoo, Mr. Whoopi. Do you have a picture of it we could borrow?
Of course, my boy, right here in my encyclopedia.
Phineas J. Whoopi. And so you see, Mr. Whoopi, we have to learn how a plane flies.
Well, then, let's take off. Yes, get it? Take off. I think the three-dimensional blackboard will help us. Here is the shape of an airplane wing. See how the top surface is curved and the bottom surface flat? That's what gives the plane lift and gets it into the air.
You mean because one's flat and the other is curved?
Precisely, my boy. It's a scientific fact that the faster air travels, the less pressure it has. Now, when the plane is standing still, the pressure is the same on all sides. But as the wing starts to move, the air flows across the wing, and because of the wing shape, the air moves faster across the top.
So there's less pressure on top.
Right, very good.
And there's more pressure on the bottom.
Which pushes the plane up into the air.
Right. But you boys are sharp today.
Yes, but how do you steer it and make it go up and down?
Well, there are three main controls. The ailerons on the wings, the elevators back here on the stabilizers, and the rudder. Up in the cockpit, you'll find a control stick and two pedals. Now, the two pedals control the rudder, which allows you to turn left or right. The stick controls the elevators. When it's pulled back, the plane goes up. And when it's pushed forward, the plane goes down. Moving it from side to side controls the ailerons, which make the plane bank as it turns.
I've got it. Now I can fly. Thanks a lot.
I think we can help you out.
But how, Mr. Whoopi?
Well, whoever let Teddy Bear out of his cage must have left his fingerprints on the lock.
His fingerprints?
Oh, yes, indeed. A fingerprint is the mark made by the ridges on the tips of the fingers. And the important thing is, no two persons in the whole world have fingerprints that are exactly alike.
In the whole world?
That's right, Chumley. Police agencies such as the FBI have millions of different fingerprints on file, each set representing a different person.
How do they keep track of all those prints?
Well, fingerprints can be broken down into four types: loops, arches, whorls, and composites, combinations of the other types. With these and other groupings, all the different fingerprints can be filed so that they can easily be matched up.
But matched up with what, Mr. Whoopi?
Well, let's take your case. Someone came to Teddy Bear's cage and opened the door.
In doing that, the culprit must have left fingerprints on the lock. If the surface of the lock is white, you sprinkle a little dark powder on it, and that will show you the fingerprints. And if the surface is dark, you sprinkle on a little white powder, and that will make the fingerprints show.
All right. The fingerprints are showing. Then what?
Then you get prints of anyone who might have let Teddy Bear out of the cage. And when you find prints that match the ones on the lock,
that will be the guy we're after. Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the... Mr. Whoopi, what should they be made of?
Steel, my boy. Steel is a mixture of iron with other substances which make it stronger than iron. Here, let's take a look at our three-dimensional blackboard. First, let's look at ordinary iron. Iron comes from iron ore, that is, from rock which has a great deal of iron in it and can be made to give up the iron easily. After the ore is dug out of the ground, it is taken to a furnace to separate the iron from the other elements in the ore.
How can the furnace do that?
Yes. Well, here's an example. Coke is also put into the blast furnace with the iron ore. Now, coke is almost pure carbon. So, as the furnace grows hotter, the carbon of the coke draws out the oxygen of the iron ore. The oxygen joins the carbon to form carbon dioxide, a gas.
Gee, look how that gas goes right up to the top.
That's just the point. That goes to the top and escapes through a pipe while the heavy melted iron drips down to the bottom, separating the iron from the oxygen in the ore. And later, the iron pours into molds where it hardens into iron bars.
That's neat, Mr. Whoopi. But how do you turn the iron into steel?
Well, there are a number of ways, Tennessee, but originally it was done by packing the iron bars along with powdered charcoal in airtight containers. The container was then placed in a brick oven and heated. The intense heat would burn out the impurities still left in the iron and would also cause the carbon in the charcoal to be absorbed by the iron, changing it into steel.
Zowie! And this steel is really strong, huh, Mr. Whoopi?
Ah, yes, my boy. Why, the city of Damascus is famous for its steel swords, which have helped win many, many battles. And I just happen to have a sword of Damascus right here.
Phineas J. Whoopi, you're the greatest.
Well, I think I can give you a few impressions. Yes, get it? Yes. Well, there are three main kinds of printing. Relief printing, planographic printing, and intaglio.
What's the difference?
In relief printing, the letters are raised, and the ink is rolled on the raised surface. Then the paper is pressed on the surface, and whoopee! Printing!
What about planographic?
Here, instead of letters being raised, they're right flat on the surface. They're made with chemicals. When the ink is rolled on, it stays on the chemicals, but does not stick to the rest of the surface. Then, when the plate is rolled on the paper, the ink is transferred, and we have printing.
And intaglio?
In this kind of printing, the letters are cut below the surface of the plate. These cuts and grooves and dots act like little inkwells. They hold the ink until it is transferred to the paper under pressure. So,
that's just the kind of thing Mr. Maninoff gave us. All cuts and grooves.
Then what you have is called an engraving.
What kind of press should we use?
Well, there are three main kinds of presses. The platen press uses a flat surface to press the paper against the type, like this. A cylinder press uses a cylinder to roll the paper over the type. And in a rotary press, the type itself is on a cylinder and the paper is rolled between it and another cylinder.
Yes, but which shall we use for this job?
Oh, yes. You said it was a small job and a small engraving. I'd use the small platen press. And I'm sure the three-dimensional blackboard can help us out. As you all know, the Pilgrims landed on the west shore of Cape Cod Bay in the early winter of 1620. They had a very hard time that first winter. There was very little food and the weather was very cold and snowy. Out of 102 women and children that landed on Plymouth Rock, 42 were lost that first winter. But in the spring, they got help. An Indian named Samoset walked into the little village and made friends with the Pilgrims. Then he brought in his chief named Massasoit.
Governor Carver, who was head of the colony, exchanged gifts with Massasoit, and the two signed a treaty of peace.
See, Jerboa?
The Indians taught the Pilgrims to plant corn, pumpkins, and beans. They showed them how to put small fish in the ground when they planted the seeds. The fish acted as fertilizer, and the crops grew big and strong. The harvest was so good that William Bradford, who had become the new governor, declared a festival to celebrate. The Pilgrims invited their Indian friends to join them, and whoopee! That was the first Thanksgiving. Here we are. Your body is very much like an automobile engine. Only instead of gasoline, the body uses food for fuel. Food is what makes you go, go, go.
Holy mackerel.
Of course. Food also builds bones and muscles and keeps your body in good repair.
You mean I got muscles made out of oysters?
I'd say you've got muscles made out of mashed potatoes.
Well, your muscles aren't exactly made out of mashed potatoes or oysters. Not directly, that is. Do any of you know what metabolism is? No? Well, that's the process that takes place inside your body which turns food into energy and tissue. Metabolism changes food into 5 basic elements. Minerals makes the bones strong. Protein builds the muscles. Fats and carbohydrates give you energy. And vitamins keep everything running smoothly.
But I eat a lot.
Eating a lot isn't as important as what you eat and when you eat it. For instance, what did you all have for breakfast this morning?
Gee, I was in a hurry. I skipped breakfast.
Me too. I overslept.
A glass of juice.
Well, don't you see? Starting the day without a good breakfast is like starting out on an automobile trip without putting gas in the tank. You just can't get very far. That's why breakfast is one of the most important meals of the day.
Okay, I've got that. Everybody eat a good breakfast.
Well, there's more to it than that. You should eat 3 good meals, get plenty of fresh air, sleep, and exercise. Made all the decorations myself.
Gee.
Would you show us how? Boy, if we could only get a tree like that.
But you can. You can make all kinds of beautiful decorations just with things you have around the zoo. And besides, it's fun. Look what you can do with the top of a tin can. Besides, throw it away. Take a pair of dull scissors and cut around the edge like this. Bend some sections up, some down, and whoopee! A beautiful shiny ornament. Here's another. Take colored paper, cut it into a circle, then starting at the edge, cut a spiral into the center. Then you can hang it up so.
Gee, that's great.
Here's an idea with popcorn and cranberries. Take a needle and long thread, push it through a piece of popcorn, then through a cranberry, then through popcorn, then another cranberry, and so on until you have a beautiful long chain to drape on the tree. You can cut stars out of colored paper and angels and Santa Claus. Make little paper baskets out of paper and fill them with candy and hang them on the tree. And cookies! Cookies of all shapes and sizes, all sparkly with sugar and lollipops and shiny paper. Make great ornaments, and then you can eat them. Why, there's no end to the decorations you can make with a little imagination. And whoopee! You'll have that tree trimmed in no time. My fantastic, flashy, flexible, 3-dimensional blackboard. Maple syrup is made from the sap of maple trees which grow in parts of Canada, the New England states, and the Great Lakes states.
Will any maple tree do?
No, not any one. There are a number of maple species that will do, but the best is the sugar maple.
Get that down, Chumley. The sugar maple.
That's right. People have known about the sugar maple a long time. Why, when the first Pilgrim settlers came to America, the Indians were already making maple syrup.
Gee, how did they do it?
The Indian got sap by cutting into the tree with his tomahawk. Then he inserted a stick to direct the flow of sap into a bowl on the ground.
And that's all there is to it?
Oh, no, my boy. That is only the sap. and it takes from 30 to 50 gallons of sap to produce just 1 gallon of syrup.
But how do you turn the sap into syrup?
Well, the Indian used to drop hot rocks into the sap. This would evaporate the water and leave the syrup. Of course, today the process has changed. Now holes are bored in the trees, and plastic tubing is inserted to collect the sap and carry it to a centrally located tank.
Zowie!
Yes, and then modern methods are used to evaporate the water from the sap and add special coloring and flavoring.
But we don't have that kind of equipment.
What will we do about the Wicked Witch?
Well, boys, it just so happens that I have 2 buckets and you rink. Well, why don't you let nature do your freezing work for you? It's certainly cold enough outside. All you need is a very large sheet of plastic. You spread it level on the ground, like so, and then begin spraying a fine mist of water all over it. Because the air is cold enough, the spray of water freezes, and you just keep spraying it until you build up a good layer of ice, and whoopee, you have a perfect skating rink.
Oh, boy, Mr. Whoopi, you're the greatest.
Pencil blackboard. Of course, boys, the whole secret of turning water into ice is the temperature. If the weather temperature stays below 32 degrees for a long time, then any handy pond or lake can freeze and make a perfect skating rink.
But we tried that on our lake, Mr. Whoopi, and So On Your Button fell through the ice.
Ah, yes, ponds and lakes can be dangerous. You see, water is a very peculiar liquid. All other liquids, except water, freeze from the bottom up, but water freezes from the top down. That's why a pond or lake that has ice on it may look strong, but may be dangerous. Children should never go on the ice of a pond or lake until some grown person has checked it to see if the ice is safe.
Oh, we won't go on that lake at all, Mr. Whoopi.
And that's why we have to have a skating rink for So On Your Button.
Well, we know that in building a rink, the problem is to get the water temperature below 32 degrees and keep it there so that the water will freeze.
How do we do that?
Well, into a shallow enclosure, you lay pipes and cover them with a thin layer of water like this. And through the pipes, you pump brine.
Brine? What's that?
It's nothing more than a mixture of salt and water. But before it's pumped through the pipes, it must run through a refrigerator plant to lower the temperature of the brine far below 32 degrees.
And then the brine going through the pipes is so cold, it causes the water over the pipes to freeze.
You have an ice skating rink. Ah, yes. Here it is. Now, the elevator is one of the most important machines we have because without it, we would have no tall buildings.
Yeah, who could walk up to the top of the Empire State Building?
Precisely, my boy. You know, people have always tried to build machines that would lift them up, but it wasn't until the middle of the 1800s when people started to build tall buildings that elevators were worked on in earnest. Basically, all elevators consist of 3 main parts: a cab to carry people, a pulley at the top of the building, and a counterweight.
What's the counterweight for?
Well, it weighs just about as much as the cab, so it balances it and makes the cab easy to lift. When the cab goes up, the counterweight goes down and vice versa.
But what makes it go up and down?
Well, in the early days, they used steam engines. But they were too slow. Then they tried a steel plunger below the car. It worked on water pressure and pushed the car up.
That's a good idea.
Yes, but it wasn't too practical because the plunger needed a hole in the ground as deep as the building was high.
What power do they use today?
Today, elevators are run by electric motors which are controlled by the operator in the cab. Of course, many elevators are now automatic. Just push a button and you go to the floor you want.
But what if the rope breaks?
Oh,
All elevators are equipped with an automatic safety device which was invented by Elijah Otis way back in 1853. It automatically stops the car if a rope should break. No one has to be afraid of riding an elevator.
But, Mr. Whoopi, steam engines, plungers, electric motors, we haven't got any of those things.
Just remember that an elevator is three things: cab, pulley, counterweight. You can supply the power by pulling on the rope.
Got it. Thanks a million, Mr.
This is our sun, and this is the Earth we live on. Now, there are 8 other known planets revolving around our sun.
8 other planets. Get that down, Chumley.
2 of those planets are closer to the sun than Earth, and 6 of the planets are farther from the sun than Earth.
Are they all the same size, Mr. Whoopi?
Oh, no! Some are much bigger than our Earth, like Jupiter and Saturn, and some are smaller than Earth, like Mercury and Pluto. All of them revolve around the sun, but some move slower than others, and some have bigger paths or orbits. The length of time it takes a planet to go around the sun is what we call a year.
I get it. It takes the Earth 365 days to go around the sun.
That's right. But it takes Pluto 248 of our years to go around the sun, while it takes Mercury only 88 days. And the other planets require varying amounts.
Very interesting, Mr. Whoopi. But what we'd really like to know is which one of these planets is most likely to have people on it.
Oh, well, let's see now. Mercury always keeps its same side toward the sun as it travels around, so one side is too hot for our kind of life, and the other side is too cold.
What about Venus?
Well, Venus is always covered with clouds, so no one is sure whether Venus always keeps the same side toward the sun or not. Still, scientists feel sure that there is no life like ours on Venus.
What about Mars?
I'm afraid not, my boy. There's not enough oxygen or water for our kind of life on Mars.
Jupiter?
No again. The atmosphere on this giant planet would suffocate us. Besides, Jupiter and all those planets beyond are much too cold to support life as we know it.
But that means there's no one on any of these planets. And we've got a man from another planet in the zoo.
Yeah, it took him 2 hours to get here.
2 hours? Oh, yes. Well, there's no planet in the universe from which anyone could travel to Earth in 2 hours. Your spaceman is a fake. Oh, we all need laws, my boy. Laws are simply rules, and even a game must have rules. Just imagine a baseball game without any rules. Chaos! Without rules, there would be so many arguments the game would never end. And it's the same with life. There would be no end of trouble without laws.
Sure, Mr. Whoopi. But who decides what the laws should be?
Well, in ancient times, the rulers made the laws. And often these laws are very unfair to the people.
Zowie.
But today, in the United States, we have a voice in what our laws will become because we vote to elect the men who make our laws.
Well, I don't remember voting for anybody who wanted to make laws about contracts.
Of course not, Tennessee. The laws about contracts are very, very old. You see, there are 2 basic kinds of contracts. The first is an oral contract. Now, when you're offered to rent your spare bed at a certain price, and when Big Bill Bailey accepted your offer, that was already a contract. An oral or speaking contract.
But then he handed me this paper to sign.
Exactly, my boy. And that's the second kind of contract. A written contract. And by signing this, You have bound yourself to abide by what it says. You should always be careful to read anything before signing it. As here it is. Now, let's suppose we use this statue of a young man for our demonstration. First, I think we ought to change his nose. For that, we'll use something called nose putty. It sticks to the face and can be molded into any shape we want. How does that look?
Funny.
Chumley.
It does look funny now, but it won't when we're finished. Next, we'll put on a dark brown foundation cream. This will act as a base for bringing out wrinkles later on. Now we'll dust on plain powder to help the first coat dry. And now we'll apply a lighter colored liquid makeup all over the face. We want him to look older. So we'll brush highlights on to accent the cheekbones and then put heavy shadows under the cheekbones, around the eyes and nose. We'll add the wrinkles with a dark pencil and...
Hey, he's beginning to look like Abraham Lincoln.
Very clever. But what's missing?
The hair and the beard.
Precisely. So we'll paint along the jaw with some spirit gum. This is sticky stuff that will hold the hair in place, but will come off easily when it has to be removed. We'll just take pieces of artificial hair, glue it in place, trim it up, put on the wig, comb it properly, and whoopee! The young statue is now Old Abe. Old Abe?
Gee, he looks so real. I think I'll ask him for his autograph.
Chumley.
A little respect, boys. Say, why don't you boys take our three-dimensional blackboard? Yes, well, as you've discovered, some insects do great harm. Why, every year they destroy almost as many acres of forest as do forest fires.
But isn't there anything that can be done to stop the bugs?
Bugs can be killed by spraying on an insecticide, a poisonous fluid used with a spray gun. That kind of spray is called a contact spray. It kills bugs just by touching them.
Gee, that spray sure is powerful.
Yes, and there are other sprays that kill bugs by causing them to choke. And still other sprays have to be eaten in order to do the job. Farmers use this type of insecticide on crops that are growing in the fields. If an insect tries to eat the crop, he'll eat the poison as well. Of course, farmers use much larger spray guns than this one. Theirs have large tanks and are sometimes equipped with wheels and a motor that pumps the insecticide out through hoses. They even use airplanes to spread insecticide.
Zowie! I guess bugs do so much damage we could become real heroes by killing every bug in the world, right, Mr. Whoopi?
Wrong, Tennessee. Not all insects are harmful to us. Some even work for us. The bee, for example, gives us honey and helps in growing flowers and crops. We get silk from the silkworm, and even bugs that are harmful to us serve as food for birds and other animals. So when you use insecticides to get rid of bothersome bugs, you must always be aware of the harm you can do if you don't use sprays wisely.
We'll be...
Well, let's start at the beginning. You see, chemistry is the science of learning what things are made of and how they change.
I know what things are made of.
Well, what's this book made of?
Paper.
And what's paper made of?
I know. Wood.
And what is wood made out of?
It's...
You see what chemistry is for? To help us find out what things are really made of.
But what are things really made of?
Everything in the world, you, me, trees, mountains, all the boys and girls are made up of basic substances called elements. There are 103 different elements. Whoopee! Hydrogen is an element. Oxygen is an element. Iron is an element.
How about water?
Water is a compound. It's made up of two elements, like this. 2 atoms of hydrogen, which is a gas, get together with 1 atom of oxygen, which is also a gas, and chemically they change into water, which is a liquid. It's called H2O.
I get it. 2 atoms of hydrogen, H, and 1 atom of oxygen, O.
Precisely, my boy. That's the way chemists indicate water. H2O. That's called a formula.
That's pretty interesting, but what good is chemistry? What does it do?
Oh, my, if we didn't have chemistry, the world would be a very different place. Chemistry provides us with medicines to fight sickness, vitamins to keep us healthy, fertilizer to help us grow food, gasoline to run our automobiles, and all sorts of materials. Nylon, plastics, metals, cement, and, of course, explosives. In fact, almost everything we eat or wear or use has either been discovered or improved by chemistry.
Well, Chumley, it looks as though we are going to have very important jobs.
Jobs?
Yes, Chumley and I have jobs as chemists. But thanks a million, Mr. Whoopies.
Dimensional blackboard. Well, let's see how a human heart works. It is a very important instrument. You see, blood must be kept moving in the body every minute of life.
Gee, why is that?
Well, the blood must carry food and oxygen to all parts of the body, and it must also take away waste materials.
What does the blood travel through?
Well, it's a system like pipes or tubes. They're actually blood vessels of 3 different kinds: arteries, veins, and capillaries.
Get that down, Chumley. We'll need 3 different sizes of tubing.
That's what the blood runs through, and it's the heart which keeps it moving. You see, the heart is like a pump, or really 2 pumps in one.
Get that, Chumley? 2 pumps.
That's right. One of these pumps sends the blood to the lungs and back again, and the other pumps blood over the rest of the body.
Those pumps look like 2-story pumps.
That's right, my boy. The top story is the auricle, and the bottom story is the ventricle.
Which way is the blood pumped in and out?
Well, the auricle on the left side receives blood coming from the lungs. This left auricle then sends the blood into the left ventricle. The left ventricle then squeezes the blood into a big artery called the aorta, which has branches going all over the body.
What happens then?
The blood flows into tiny capillaries. From the capillaries into veins, and they carry blood to the right auricle. From there, it goes to the right ventricle, and this sends it through arteries to the lungs, where it flows through capillaries. Then into veins leading back to the heart, and whoopee! The whole process starts all over again.
Gee, I sure didn't know all that kind of stuff was going on inside me all the time.
It's complicated, all right, but I think we can build one. We'll build that royal robot a heart.
Let's take a look at our flashy, flexible, 3-dimensional blackboard. The first factory that used the assembly line of manufacturing was a flour mill run by Oliver Evans of the United States. This mill cleaned, ground, and sifted the grain without stopping between steps. You can see that the assembly line system of manufacturing moving goods along from one worker to another made production much faster and thus helped make products much cheaper because fewer hours of labor were needed.
That's great, Mr. Whoopi. But what about cars?
Oh, yes, cars. It was Henry Ford who introduced the assembly line system for automobiles. By 1920, he was making automobiles on the first fully automatic assembly line.
Gee, Mr. Whoopi, what is everybody doing?
If you went into a modern automobile assembly plant, you'd see something like this. First, the bare framework placed upside down on a long, slow-moving conveyor belt. Next, someone fastens on the rear suspension system, and the next man bolts on a rear axle. Then the front suspension system is mounted, and other men reach in bins alongside the conveyor belt, pulling out propeller shafts, fuel tanks, brake linings, and many other items which they install in turn.
Zowie, Mr. Whoopi, that's fast.
Oh, yes, indeed. Next, a giant mechanical hand picks up the frame and turns it right side up on the conveyor belt. An overhead crane swings a complete engine into position while men working alongside put on the wheels and tires, steering gear, and even bumpers. A moment later, out of an opening in the ceiling, a complete car body is lowered into place, and in pits underneath, the assembly line men tighten bolts to hold the body to the framework, and other workers around the car connect tubes and wires, put on seat covers and floor mats and all the rest.
Looks to me like all those people would trip over each other.
Oh, no, my boy. There is no frantic haste or confusion. Each man has only a few operations to perform, and their work is so arranged that no one interferes with anyone else. You see, the whole process of assembly line production is a good example of teamwork between workers and management to make enough cars to go around.
And that's exactly...
If you want anyone to like you, you need to know the rules of etiquette.
The rules of what?
Rules of etiquette. These are simple rules based on common sense to make you and others comfortable in any situation. Here, let's take a look at the three-dimensional blackboard. Oh, yes, here it is. Rules of etiquette include table manners, proper greetings, introduction, polite remarks and replies. Oh, many, many subjects. But let's look at Chumley and... What's her name again?
Samantha.
Oh, yes, Samantha. Now, suppose you two go to dinner together. Chumley mustn't do something like this.
I should say not.
No, indeed. Such tricks are not only bad manners, but they're very dangerous. Instead, Chumley should hold Samantha's chair and guide her to the table as she sits down.
You got that, Chumley? Hold her chair and guide it to the table.
Exactly. And when it comes to opening doors, the gentleman never goes first. Instead, he opens the door for the lady, holds it, and then follows her in.
I've got that. What next, Mr. Whoopi?
When walking along the street, the gentleman takes the lady's arm to help her up and down street curbs and up steps as well.
Okay. Help her up curbs and steps. What else?
Well, let's see. A gentleman always walks on the side nearest the street with the lady he's escorting. And if they get on a bus, the lady goes first with the gentleman helping her. But getting off, the gentleman leaves first and then helps the lady down.
I think I've got it now, Mr. Whoopi. It's just sort of doing things that will make life easier for her.
Exactly, my boy. Why, some say that one of history's most famous gentlemen, Sir Walter Raleigh, even went so far as to lay down his coat so that a lady might cross a mud puddle without wetting her feet. That's it. Of course, if this were the days of knighthood, the answer would be simple.
How's that, Mr. Whoopi?
Well, you see, the knights played in tournaments competing against each other for a lady's favor. The knight who won the tournament was honored by the most beautiful lady at court.
That's it. A contest. We'll have a race. And Chumley will win. Tennessee Tuxedo will not fail.